those of you, this is your first half. This is their first half presentation in the room ever. So we're back at the RPIS, so we're slowly getting back into the ETC. That's what once upon a time was. So for those of you who've never seen halves before, the teams have 15 minutes. They're going to give us a sense of what they've been up to this semester and where they hope to go from here. They might do a live demo if they're feeling risky, or they might do a video, give us a sense of what they've made to date. So again, pointing towards the direction of where they're going. So they got 15 minutes, they have 5 minutes today. Anybody can ask. Just, I'm trying to see where he is. Bob always asks. God bless you, Bob. Is he here? Or do you walk back out? We're picking on him, he's not here. So we have 4 teams today. We start with Wondermath. We have Real Empathy, then Inklings, and we'll end with Lyric Flow. So, Wondermath.
Hello everyone, we're Team Wondermath. I'm Leslie, the co-producer of the team.
I'm Kat, the other co-producer on the team, also doing design work.
I'm Jacob, the programmer of the team.
I'm Yuanqing, another programmer of this team.
And I'm Sophia, I'm the artist.
And our client, Luke Harris, is the director of the Center for Arts and Education at West Liberty University. Before talking about Wondermath, we have to mention our biggest reference, MathWorks. So MathWorks were created by Tracy Jackson, a secondary teacher in San Diego. Her goal was to get kids moving and excited to solve math puzzles during the pandemic. Here are some examples of the MathWorks on the sidewalks. Inspired by this, our client Lou wanted to enhance the visualization of both math and MathWorks, seeking help among talents. We're so honored to be here to create an augmented reality experience, Wondermath. Not only help kids see math, but also engage them in playing with math in pursuit of a critical and conceptual math understanding.
To us, a successful deliverable is an experience where the students enjoy solving and talking about mathematical concepts. To accomplish that, we need to hone in on these 3 pillars. The content needs to reinforce the students' existing math knowledge. The interactivity in AR will help visualize math problems in a more intuitive way, and our playtest will help us determine where the students find fun. One of the first things our clients told us that she needed was an activity that did not skill and drill or make a chore of solving math problems. Therefore, we're pushing this experience to be as welcoming, low stakes, and educational as we can. Because open-ended math without anxiety is so different from the way we were taught in elementary school, we've done a lot of research with math children's books and existing math learning apps. These books were awesome at showing us problems that relate to the real world in a way that kids enjoy and informed what we presented at quarters. In order to set ourselves apart, our 2 ideas, the tightrope game and the cooking game, focused on ways that could get kids to walk around the space and move the device around to see different parts of the virtual environment.
However, quarters showed us that these ideas weren't perfect. For one, both of our ideas were pretty overscoped to the point that we wouldn't have been able to iterate quickly. The ability to be agile is crucial because with an audience of 10-year-olds, we needed to follow the fun and be able to pivot quickly towards the most fun concepts. And finally, we'd lost sight of some of the original point of a math walk, to get kids engaged in math in bite-sized chunks. Complicated mechanics would be an obstacle to math learning, not an enhancement. So we pivoted our design. We returned to math walk problems to see how math concepts can be presented in the simple medium of chalk. We started thinking of our experience as a toy, not as a game. Math toys are manipulable and provide an illustration of math concepts, but most importantly, they're fun. A fun math experience is enough for us. It doesn't have to be as complex and rules-driven as the lens of a game. And finally, we decided that rather than attempt to teach math with our experience, we should focus on designing a play experience that can be used to spark classroom discussion. Our client Lou and John Bailash were both able to connect us with classroom teachers for our target grade level to help us figure out the exact guidelines for how this would be used in the classroom. The use cases varied teacher to teacher, so we had to make a decision based on our improved design priorities. Ultimately, we landed on producing multiple small math activities that teachers and kids can choose from to mimic the freedom of a math walk. The 3 activities are all designed for use indoors inside the classroom. They require different amounts of floor space so that Wandermath is flexible for different setups.
Yeah, so another constraint we had to consider is the platform for our activity. Like in the beginning of this semester, our client is asking us to do this AR project based on Chromebook, but we soon realized that most of Chromebooks are not included a rear camera, like which is almost the most important hardware we need for any like AR project. Then we pivot to the mobile devices like iPhone, Android, like Pixel, which is great alternative, but like since like most of school are not allowed the kids to use phone in school, so we finally decided to use the Android tablet as our main devices, since the screen is bigger and the price is lower. We then did a lot of research on how to do AR project, like AR development, without fancy hardware, such as like HoloLens, Google Glass. So we found out the key of making a good AR project is to, enable our users to physically interact with the virtual things without too many like buttons, UIs. So just like Pokemon Go, we just throwing the ball like by swiping and just catch the cute Pokemon over there. So for the mechanic implementation, what we should do here is like make the interface as clean as possible and like also make the overall interaction very easy to play.
Yeah, so on top of that, we also did extensive research on past ETC projects dealing with AR technology, as you can see here. So we noticed that a lot of the projects actually require additional hardware. As such, we have selected 2 projects, which is more closely related to what we want to achieve in our project. So the first project is Imagica. It's about an interactive and immersive tablet experience for the 3rd and 5th graders, featuring an overlay of the existing environment with the ocean. So we learned from their simple, interactive, fun mechanism and decided to create an AR experience that is closely linked to the classroom settings. So with this research and our intent of creating a simple, fun mechanism in the classroom, we came up with 20 different ideas and evaluated them based on art, tech, and difficulty for kids. Finally, we landed on this folding nets activity. We believe folding is fun, and it will be useful for students to interact with shapes in the 3D world. So after deciding the mechanism, another project we look closely at is Echo, where they created a 3D character in AR for players to interact and have fun with. As such, we have decided to add our own character into the folding game, folding activity, and to better engage students.
As Jacob mentioned, we are interested in having a 3D character in our AR world acting as a sidekick and a peer to the students. We went through lots of iteration with the designs of our buddy, ranging from little monsters to more humanoid characters. Finally, we landed on Finley, the skateboarding chinchilla. Shown here is the progression of Finley from initial concept to a final rigged and animated character. Finley's main role is to introduce and often participate in a math activity. Finley should provide agency to the player as students help them create objects in their space. We wanted Finley to be as appealing as possible to the majority of students, so their design leads more towards a gender-neutral character with a more female-presenting voice, currently voiced by Kat. The rig also includes props and emotes to make Finley's movement more expressive. In addition to the character, we're lightly populating the AR space with stylized environment art and tutorial icons to overlay in the student's classroom. These rollerblades and the CubeNet are part of the first activity, which we will now show a demo of.
So this demo video.
Hi, I'm Finley. Nice to meet you. Today is my friend Quinn's birthday. I'm almost done making a birthday card, but I need to fold it. Did you happen to fold the card? I was also going to wrap the roller skates I got for Quinn. Well, I was trying to anyway. Can you help me make a cube so I can finish wrapping the skates? I need a box, but I only have a flat piece. Do you think you can make a cube out of that? No way, that's a cube. It makes sense. See, a cube has 6 faces. Since you're a folding master, do you want to help me wrap a few more presents? I just need one more cube to finish wrapping the presents. Do you think that one makes a cube too?
So this is the demo. Hope all of you have enjoyed the demo. So now I will break down our demo with more details. Firstly, our character Finny. We have added character tracking for Finny to follow the device movement to be more engaging to the player. We have also split our activity into multiple phases to better engage the player. Firstly, we have a simple birthday card mechanism to teach them the folding aspect. Then we have phase 1, where the student will try to fold a really easy cube to get them started. Next, we have phase 2, with more cubes and a mini test for the students by mixing in a round cube. Finally, we have phase 3, to allow the students to explore folding different shapes, such as cuboid, square pyramid, or hexagon. At any time when they are bored, they can actually tap on Finny to go to the birthday party. And that's the end for activity 1.
After 1 week of development on this first activity, we had the chance to test it at Southsideworks Tech Playground. We were able to learn pretty quickly that manipulating 3D objects through folding the net of a cube was satisfying, so we continued developing this past the first week. We learned that we needed to scaffold the experience better, which is the origin of the birthday card, phase 0, and we added a ton more audio and visual feedback. In week 6, we play-tested the latest prototype at Museum Lab. At this location, we had more playtesters, so more of a chance to dive into whether this activity was transformationally effective. Wander Math targets an attitude transformation, that math is an adventure. And barriers to this are that the perception of math is an anxiety-inducing performance activity. So at our playtest, we found that the net folding activity was most engaging with kids who had reported more negative opinions of math, or math anxiety, in our survey. Therefore, we believe there's strong potential for Wander Math to overcome this barrier.
So for the next part of this project, we're going to use the volume as the core math concept for it. We are inspired by the Shape 3D and the Mesh application from iPhone. So what we want is to let our user get some sense of like how long is 1 feet, or like how big is 1 square feet, and also enable them to build their own maybe 3D shapes to play with the concept of volume. And for now, we're thinking about like giving them several dots on the floor in the beginning, and then guide them to connect them together to get a very basic geometric shape, also with some indicator to show the length and the size of it. After that, we want them to lift this shape up and feels like to create a 3D object by using the touchscreen and camera of the devices. By doing so, we believe they will have some basic understanding of transforming like 2D to 3D, and also get some understanding of the knowledge of volume.
Apart from making different activities, we also learned from a past ETC project called PRISM that it's helpful to write a document for teachers so that they could better understand and utilize our activities. Therefore, we are writing, reviewing, and revising a teacher resource guide with teachers and updating this on our website. We would also like to share with you our plan before soft opening. We are planning to have 2 more activities for this project, spend 2 weeks for each of them until week 10. Then we'll stop developing, but polish all the 3 activities and do the final documentation for the whole project. By soft opening, we'll officially wrap up all the stuffs and be ready to deliver all the codes, assets, and files to our client.
We'd like to give a special thanks to all of the ETC faculty who've helped us out, our client and everyone at West Liberty University who's consulted with us on education, and the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh for help with both of our playtesting locations. So to sum it all up, we are Wander Math. We are creating an augmented reality math walk-inspired experience for 4th and 5th grade students to help them see math and play with math. And we're now open to questions. Thank you. Yes, Dave?
Yeah, earlier you mentioned that one of your ideas was to go design for a toy, but also design for discussions. And I'm curious, are discussions a thing you're still targeting? And if so, how are you planning on designing for discussions in the classroom?
Yeah, so the question was about how are we planning on designing for classroom discussions? That's a really good question and definitely ties in a lot with the teacher resource guide. So with the teacher resource guide specifically, we want to include questions that the teachers might ask as a follow-up discussion to our activity. So with the nets folding game, we might ask something like, how would you calculate how much wrapping paper you needed, and things like that? How do you know which nets will work to fold for the cube? The discussion is, at this point, currently meant to be teacher-driven, which we feel will be more effective than Finley-driven.
Is the Finley character appears in everything, every module you do with it? Is it going to be, the character is going to be sort of the host, the MC for everything, every activity?
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. So the question is Finley a recurring character through all 3 activities? And the answer is yes. So in the birthday party, in the second activity, the idea is the shapes they're building is a skate park for a skateboard, etc.
Finley will skate on those ramps.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We're also going to have Finley interact with all the exhibits, so the second ramp problem will have Finley interact with the finished skate park.
Yes.
You may have covered this, but did you focus group the Finley and the other potential avatars?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we did focus group for naming. For the character design itself, that was more about Sophia. We've been focus grouping the math activities themselves. We have 2 different courses being taught at West Liberty Education Program that we're able to ask the teacher education students how the math can be incorporated in.
I have one more question about Finley. I like this character. I wanted to see think more things with a skateboard. I think kids would love to see that. I think so. The more you can incorporate something like that into it, whether the kids succeed on a chore, the task will be a reward.
Yeah, so the comment was about Finley having a really cool skateboard, and that's definitely the focus of the animations for Activity 2, since it's based around building a skate park for them.
Time for one more?
Yeah, Lauren?
I don't know if I missed what you mentioned for your third activity, but it seems like you've been focusing a lot on like how you build like a volume. I'm wondering if like for the third activity you're also focusing on that or exploring a different area of math.
Yeah. So the question was about sort of what area of math is the third activity going to explore. We have an extra slide for that. So the mechanic for that is the catapulting mechanic, sort of inspired by the AR Angry Birds. And we're also inspired by a past ETC project that made an app called Angle Jungle. Because 4th and 5th grade math, there's a lot of standards about angles. And so being able to catapult something left and right to hit a target is a satisfying, fun way to teach about angles.
All right, thanks, team.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Halves presentation from Team Real Empathy. Thank you. So today we are the team that create virtual patients, synthesized patients, for training second-year medical students to learning empathy during the conversation based on the different and diverse scenario. So let's introduce our team first. We have like 4 fantastic members here. We got Martin, Shanshan, Bella, and me. And also, we are leading by inspiring faculty member Ricardo and Ruth. They put a lot of insight into this project. Also, we have amazing clients. They are from University of Pittsburgh. We have Paula, Nadia, and Elvira. They are all being here today. Thank you so much. They bring a lot of resource into this project. We appreciate that. So talking about the clients, that's talking about the client's need. So basically, they want to build a learning system to teach their medical students to learn how to show the empathy during the conversation with the patients. Actually, they have their baseline solution now. It's just like they hire an actors and being there to play their patients. So the reason they're hiring us, because they want to improve the engagement during this whole training process. So there's like 2 dimensions we use to improve the engagement. The first of all, we're trying to use like the VR because we want to break the limitation and boundary of the space and the time and the cost. So basically, the student just sitting there and with a VR headset, and that's it. And another dimension is that we're trying to just mimic how they work in the real world. So the student just there, and they don't need to click any button. They don't need to learn how to use the system. They're just trying to make a natural conversation with the patients. And also our clients very focused on the extendability because they want to iterate this project in the future. At the final, we only handle like 1 scenario for our final deliverable, but in the future, they want to build this, like rebuild this again to become a large scenario training system. So how to make our project and the whole process become easy to rebuild is very important for us. So that's talking about our solution. So just imagine you are the student and sitting in the clinic room. You just put on your VR headset, and we are playing the 360 VR video in front of you. So in the video, you will see there's a patient who's played by our actors just sitting there, and you just need to talk with these patients. And we are using our AI chatbot to process your speech input. And there is a conversation tree, which just manages this whole conversation and will decide like which clips have to be played by next. And also, so the reason we use the 360 video and using the AI chatbot, because we want to represent the fidelity of our virtual patients. We want students to believe they are talking to a real person, and then they can build their emotion connection and then can feel empathy to that. So later, we will let Martin to talk through more about our AI chatbot. Martin.
Thanks, Leo. So here's our high-level system pipeline diagram. Players' audio input will be translated into text first and then sent over to the AI chatbot. The AI chatbot will analyze players' empathy levels and then compute the corresponding patient's response. The Unity will then be notified to display the correct visual feedback to the player. So overall, it's not a very complicated system. The core part is we need to configure a robust and solid conversation tree to drive our AI chatbot so that it won't be so stupid and our player will feel like they're talking to a real person. To do that, we analyze the reference video provided by our clients, Nadia, to analyze the conversation structure between a doctor and a patient. Eventually, we're able to characterize the overall conversation into 5 stages. Greetings, purpose of the visit, patient's concerns, patient's backstory, and finally, medical instructions. Each stage is largely driven by the doctor, or we can say the player. And within each stage, there can be 1 or several units where the patient will react to what the doctor says or answer doctor's questions. And each single unit will, in the chatbot system, will work following the diagram on the left. After we figure out how the system works, we then hold a meeting with our clients, and we build this drafted version of conversation tree with stickers on the whiteboard. It still follows the 5 stages of conversation structure I just talked about. For each single unit in the conversation tree, we predicted some possible players' positive, neutral, and negative input and their corresponding patients' reactions. And after figuring how we build a conversation tree, we went into the AI chatbot scripting tool and built our AI chatbot version 1. This is an example of how we do a single unit within the purpose of the visit stage. So the player's audio input will be analyzed in the blue block on the right, on the left, and the chatbot will evaluate players' empathy levels. And based on that, the red box on the right will output the corresponding patient's output. So this is the version 1 AI chatbot we built. Next, I will hand over to Bela to talk about AI chatbot version 2, how we did the iterations on that, and also our 360 video solutions.
Thanks, Martin. So after we develop our first conversation tree with our client, it is rather a simplified and basic conversation tree. With this conversation tree, we might end up with a lot of unexpected answers or a lot of medical terms that we want to avoid. So we arranged some playtests with the medical students, and we figured out that they tend to ask questions about the symptoms for our patients. So to keep our experience more about empathy, we iterate our conversation tree based on their response. We added some clips to answer the question about symptoms and trying to drag them back to our background story. The second problem we had during the playtest is we figured out that if the player said something that cannot be recognized, this experience will be jammed. So we added some guiding clips to guide our player and to continue with our experience. So we chose 360 video to videotape our VR clips, and there's a lot of problems. We had meetings with experienced users to talk about the issues we might encounter with the 360 video camera, like lighting issues and noise issues. This is the environment where we will be filming for our final clips. This is the clinic room that our client used. So it will be the same room as if the students are taking this test in person. We paid a visit to this place, and we did some test shots there to see if there's any other issues or equipment that we need to be prepared. From the test shots, the lighting issue will be easily fixed because this room has no window, and also the voice there is loud and clear. As for actor and acting, I played the patient in our demo video, so using ourselves as actors could give us a lot of time to rehearsal and change our video clips according to the play test as soon as possible. However, lacking of acting experience could cause the patient in the video clip looks very stiff. So we thought of hiring drama students, and they had experience in acting. However, their age does not fit in our scenario as a pregnant woman who had miscarriage before. So the next solution would be hiring professional actors. They are well trained, but they might be out of budget for us, and also they don't have time for rehearsal. For our final clips, we will ask our client Nadia to play the patient in the video clips. She had experience and she understands what we are doing right now. For the final scene in Unity, we also need a model to cover up the camera. Since it is a 360 video camera, the tripod beneath it will also be filmed. And also adding a model in our Unity scene will also give the player a place to locate themselves and to avoid motion sickness. And this will be the model we're going to use. The player cannot see the head of this model since the camera is placed here. They can only see the body, so all we need is a model in a sitting position. Next, I will pass it to Shanshan to talk about editing.
Thanks, Bella. So just like how we use the 360 video recording and the high poly models to ensure the credibility of the doctor's response. So we also dedicated a lot of the time in editing those videos using variety of the approach. And here is why the editing is important in our project, because we want to increase the transmission smoothness for avoiding break the immersion and meeting on the reality. And we also want to make the students believe they can talk to the real person. So before I said, the
smooth transition is very important in our experience. And it can bring the enjoyable experience to the users. So in order to prevent the video cannot smooth connect the jump cut when the multiple film played in the VR. So here are some solutions we thinking about. The first one is about the record more buffers. In practice, we shot an extra period before and after the patient's response. And these buffers give us more rooms to smooth the jump cut and create the seamless transition. The second solution is record the idle state. So for the idle state, we are going to recording some clips that the patient listening to the players. So it can make the pause between two videos more smoothly. And the third solution is we try to use the UI and feedbacks to recover the gap between two videos. So the players will ignore the latency and the jump cut. And following the feedback system, we're also thinking about design and evaluation system. So for the students, instructors, and also the graders, they can review their performance in the, and improve in the next practice. So there are 3 functions we might implement. The first one is the real-time feedback. During the whole conversation, the real-time feedback can cover the gap, but it might make the students feel nervous or stressful. The second one is about the recording. Recording is a good system for the instructor to grade the students. And also it's good for the students to review their performance at any time. So next one is about the timeline. Timeline is a very powerful interface for the students to review their reaction at the different branches. And also they can precisely modify their response. So next I will pass to Neil, talk about the demo.
Thank you, Shanshan. Okay, so let's watch our demo video. So we use our actors now.
So can you tell me why you're here?
I still don't get it. I suggest you are asking me what I'm here for?
Yes, yes.
I'm here for my 30-week pregnancy visit. I have some concerns.
Okay, can you tell me more about the concerns?
Well, I'm feeling pretty well, but my blood pressure has been elevated a bit at home.
You just mentioned elevation in blood pressure.
My blood pressure is between 150 to 90. I measure that at home daily. Well, I've had multiple issues with my blood pressure before, but I don't have any other symptoms now. Yes, so I had a stillbirth with my first child at 27 weeks. And I also had severe preeclampsia with my second child and had to develop him at 31 weeks.
Well, Miss Smith, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I feel like I was really not listened to in the past. With my first child, I told the doctor that something went wrong, but they told me to relax and drink a lot of water. The next day, I started having contraction, there was no heartbeat, and I lost the baby.
Well, again, I'm really sorry to hear that, Miss Anderson. It's very difficult for
Thank
you.
you. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing all this time. Is there any other tests you want me to do?
Okay, so this is about our demo video. So you can see there is still like some jump cut there, it's very obviously, but somehow when we test it in the VR world, it's not that like obviously. But yeah, we are doing more play tests by this week, and we are redesigning about our script and how can we just film it in next week, and we will film it with Nadia at the UPMC's clinic room. And then after that, we will have the 2 weeks can finish our next prototype, and it's going to be used on the play test day. And then we will collect more feedback and then coming up with our final and the 4th prototype for the final delivery. So yeah, that's all about our update from the team Real Empathy. Any question?
Could you talk about your plans for sound? How you're going to make sure you get good quality recording, and are you going to do anything special with sound effects or anything like that?
So actually just asking the question about like, how we try to keep our sounds become clear, something like that. Yeah, so the things we're trying to, now we're just recording by our 360 camera, and we're just trying to, if there's available, can just like plug in with some additional microphone to enhance the voice from the actors becomes clear enough. And also we will try to put some like ambient voice to meet every clips, so you don't just be break by the immersion by the soundtrack break. Yeah, is any update?
Yeah, so in the demo video, there was some kind of background noise, but it's because we had like air conditioning in our room, but with the test shot we did in the actual clinic room, the sound will be much better there because it is a really quiet room there. Sorry, which project you were saying?
Standard patient, it's called.
Standard patient?
Oh.
Standardpatient.org, there's an open source version that you can look at.
Yeah, I think, have you watched that project before? Question to the team. I think we would like spend more time to do more research on that project, as you mentioned. But we do others like research for other projects, more recently from like Ohio State University.
It's 10 years long, doing just this.
Oh, you say they used the 10 years to building that project?
They've been developing it over 10 years. Well, just look at it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, Ross?
I may have missed it, but were there prompts for the doctors to ask questions? Or were the doctors just coming up with questions on them? You had a slide up there that asked, the questions slide. Are there prompts for doctors to ask questions?
You want to take over this question?
Right. So the question is there any indication or hints to given to the player to ask questions? Am I getting it right? Okay. So I think the answer is no, because this is a training session. We want to recreate the current session with a human. And when the student is actually training with a human actor, there's no problem telling the student what to do and what to ask. So we think we shouldn't do that in the VR setting.
But if it's open-ended, how does the patient know that the answer, if the doctor can ask anything? Through. So if you have some database that says, the voice recognition says, this is about this, or this is about that.
Correct?
All right.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch how you're actually evaluating the empathy expressed by the doctor and how accurate that might be.
So your question is like how we're going to evaluate their empathy showing. So the things we're trying to do is our system don't judge them then how empathy you show. We just like make this the whole experience becomes like recorded, And we also just record down all the decision you made for the time with the timeline. And then there's the instructors or the grader, with the student for this whole training session. So they were going to give more feedback based on those material we provide.
Okay, that makes sense, but in an early slide, there was a node in your flow chart of empathy evaluation, right, after speech to text. Then there's a node about empathy evaluation, no? We might be out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Okay.
All right. So
We're out of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can get it. All right, thanks, team.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and here is Team Inklings. So we are the year-long animation studio. And here are all the team members. We have 2 programmers, 1 3D artist, 1 2D artist, and I'm the producer. We have 4 faculty advisors. They are John, Ruth, Ricardo, and Mo. The goal of our project is to create a short animated video, utilize the hand motion capture to mix the 3D to 2D, from the first-person perspective to deliver a more realistic and engaging experience. We spent our first 4 weeks on polishing the story from pre-package. The story is about a young witch turns her world into 2D with magic ink by accident, aiming to tell the audience not to take shortcuts. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the storyline. At the beginning, the witch received a delivery box with magic ink and instruction books. So she read the instruction books to learn how to draw runes with magic ink. As the story developing, she draws a simple rune which came alive very successfully. So she became overconfident by herself, and she flipped the instruction book and skipped many pages. Without learning enough, she drew the damaged rune by accident. The rune bumping around in the room and turns all the objects into 2Ds. And let's jump into the 3D animatics. We spent our 2 weeks on creating the 3D animatics, and it helped us to block out our timeline and speed, and also set down our project scope. And I hope we can show it on the presentation, but it seems doesn't work. Okay, yeah. And Claire will talk about the art.
Thank you, Gloria. So I will be talking about the art direction that we're going for. The team decided to go for a semi-realistic art style because we believe this art style has a lot of advantage that suits the goal of the team. The artists want to create really detailed art asset for the project, but if we're going for a realistic art style, that could put an expectation on our audience that everything will happen pretty accurately, which is extremely challenging for the team, especially when we don't have a real rigger and an animator. So eventually we decided to go for a semi-realistic art style, not only because it allows the artists to do the art asset that we want, but also delivering the story that we want to tell. On the right here is the visual guidance that we did to help us to test out the lighting and the 3D layout before we put everything into a 3D space. We are not using it as a reference for the 3D layout, but it does help us a lot when it comes to some decision making. And here is our 3D asset pipeline. So we are mainly modeling everything, especially for the hard surface modeling in Maya. We also use Maya for the UV unwrapping. When it comes to more organic objects, we are using ZBrush. And we also use ZBrush to create some normal maps and bump maps. And we will bring everything into Maya to get everything ready to go. And we will eventually use Substance Painter and Substance Designer for the textures. And here is an example of the 3D object that we have already made. And here is the 3D blockout that we did. You can see there's a window in front of the table. This is serving as one of the light source of the environment. We also have some candles on the desk to serve as other light source. The window on the right-hand side is not serving as any light source because we think the light comes from the side will be a little destructive. We will eventually have a curtain to cover it up just to make the right-hand side a little bit more interesting. And here is some animation and a rigging test that we did. This is the first room that the character draws in the story, which we pictured moving as a worm. And that's the reason why we are using a skeleton spine to achieve the feature that we want. And another rigging test that we did is for the feather pen, which is used to draw the 2 rooms in the story. We consider this as a very important character because the feather pen will be shown in the story very often. And we also consider drawing room scene as a really important thing. And that's the reason why we did this dynamic rigging testing, because it allows the feather to create a really smooth and automatically generated wiggling animation. And now I will pass it to Z to talk about the tech pipeline.
Thank you, Claire. Hi, so I will talk about our tech pipeline. So this is how our general pipeline looks like. We use Leap Motion to do hand motion capture, and we pass that data into the Unreal Engine. And in the Unreal Engine itself, we do cameras, we do lightings, we do other stuff, and we output a raw video. And then we feed that video to the After Effects and Premiere to do post-processing and post-editing. So why this pipeline? Well, for Leap Motion, it is something ETC has. It's small, it's good, it's accurate. We are satisfied with the result of it. And for After Effects and Premiere, well, it is in our technology stack. They are great to do what they're supposed to do. And for the animation rendering softwares, well, there are other softwares out there. The reason we choose Unreal is first, it's powerful enough. This is a shot from Mandalorian, a TV series, which is completely made in Unreal Engine. So we think it is powerful enough to do our work. And also it supports fast rendering, which while other softwares might take hours and days to render a video clip, Unreal Engine could render it in minutes, which allows us to constantly change the lights and change the cameras into it and see the result immediately. Unreal Engine also in our technology set, we are familiar to it, and also we want to learn more about it. So Leap Motion. What is Leap Motion? Leap Motion is a small device that transforms your hand movements into data. And the way we access this data is, well, Leap Motion has a plugin for Unreal, so we can access these data through Unreal Engine. And this is how we do the hand motion capture. While the Leap Motion official team does have a tool for accessing and processing the data of it, but since we want to use our own model hands, these tools aren't really useful, so we create our own animation blueprint. This is an overview of one of the animation blueprint we wrote, and this is only for one hand. And a little bit detail into it, well, you can see we try to get things from the body state, especially in this case, the left arm. And from the left arm, we try to get the data of the lower arm, which is the data exactly its position, orientation. We do some remapping, and then we save it. And afterwards, we just, in the animation graph, we pull those saved data out, and we apply to the models we have. So just a little recap. Leap Motion is something that for us to transfer our hand movements to data, and the animation blueprint allows us to apply those data to the models we have. So now we have a virtual hand that we can control by our real hands. Then we have to film it. And this is where the tape recorder kicks in. So as you can see, we just grab the two hands under the tape recorder, we hit play, and we hit record. Then we can do the performing. And the sequencer down there will record all the movement data and save it as a sequence or a shot. After we film a lot of shots for different parts of our story, then this is the part where the sequencer kicks in. So we put all our shots together, form a whole shot, and we can add in cameras, we can add in post-processing, we can add in other objects to keyframe it. The right picture is called sequencer curve, which allows us to have the ability to change the interpolation from keyframe to keyframe. Basically, just give us more ability to adjust things in a real detailed way. So after all that, we just click one button, and we can render out the video. And after all that, we got the raw video. We plan to put the video through After Effects and Premiere Pro to do the post-processing and post-editing. And that's all about the general pipeline for tech. And now I'll pass to Neil about challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Z. And after we settling down all the tech pipeline and the art asset pipeline, we entered the real phase of animation production, and we actually met a lot of challenges here. The first challenge we have is that we need to deal with some of the limitation the Leap Motion has. The first limitation the Leap Motion has, it has a limited detecting range. When the hand motion is outside its range, the motion cannot be captured correctly. Also, Leap Motion has an unstable detection accuracy. It works for most of the time, but sometimes it's hard to detect hand motion in certain angles, and sometimes it's hard to detect hand motion, very complex hand gestures. Our solution is that when we're doing our animation recording, we'll separate long pieces into short ones and ensure all the hand gestures and hand movement range is within Leap Motion's capability. The second challenge we have is during our animation production, we need to make sure that the virtual object moving in our scene is matching with the hand motion, with our motion captured hand animation. The video on the left corner is a short example where we're doing like a short animation, hand picking up a cylinder from the table. But when I'm doing the recording in real life, sorry, can you mute that? Thanks. When doing the real calculation in real world, I have to imagine to pick up the cylinder instead of like real holding a cylinder from the table, because actually holding something in my hand will block the Leap Motion. And while I'm doing the animation, I need to keyframe the cylinder to make it match with my hand movement correctly. And this is just like a 5-second shot, but in order to do all the 3 minutes shot, like the whole animation, this work is tedious. So our solution is that we will avoid such complex hand interaction with object in our world. For example, in our scene, there's a moment that the witch will draw the ruins with a feather pen, but the interaction with the feather pen and the hand is very complex. So we decide just to use magic to control the pen instead of actually holding the pen. Can you jump? And after we figure out all the challenges and development pipeline, we just decide to make a fully made video clip to make sure that everything combined together can work. This is just a very short animation clip. There's still a lot of placeholders there, but we just make this video to make sure that all the VFX, all the modeling, and all the pipelines hand capture can work together, and we can extend this to a full 3 minutes animation clip. And that's everything about the main production. As a year-long animation studio, we also need to make a pre-package for a future team. And I'll pass it to Qing to talk about it.
Thank you, Neil. And next, I'm going to talk about the pre-production part. So for the pre-production part, and currently we have a primary pitch, which is a story established in the background of a future biological military lab, and using the mockumentary form to state a story that a scientist insisted in holding a dangerous experiment and then leading to an inevitable failure. And the story consisted of both subject part and also objective part. So we're using a lot of monitors here to illustrate the objective parts and we also have the scientist's feelings and his memories to serve as the subjective parts, so you can see the story in another version. And for the concept, and we have a prologue scene and epilogue scene, and the story statement may be using the flashback or narration interpose. So you cannot see the story at the very first, but you can reveal the story by following the storyline. And for the aesthetic, and we are going to using a lot of neon colors like the neon blue and neon green to help enhance our future realistic and also cyber thing to help to establish how the audience to recognize all those words. And to summarize, we are the team Anklings, and we're creating animated film utilizes motion capture and to mix 3D and 2D. And thank you, and we're open for questions.
I have a question about your pre-production. It seemed like the visual aesthetic and the high concept of it was a serious story, and yet you're choosing a mockumentary structure, which strikes me as odd. Can you explain how the two things go together?
Yeah, we're using the mockumentary form, so we're using the monitors to record the things. It's more like feeling like some scientific TV shows, and also we're going to interpose with some the main characters' feelings, so it can be mixed to make it feel more like a documentary form.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you're using After Effects and Premiere to do post-processing and editing, and I'm wondering why are you moving away from Unreal at that stage when those tools are available there?
Yeah, the question is why we're using Unreal's post-processing instead of using After Effects and other projects. It's actually, we're not avoid like Unreal like post-processing 100%ly. It's just in that case, we can separate like the works into different phases because like we can have the raw video, and on one hand, the artist can start to like make like adjustment to the final like scenes in After Effects, while they also like the programmers like us can also doing other things in Unreal. So we can separate our work and increase like our work efficiencies. Yeah. Yes?
So I know you're getting the hand data from the leap motion sensor, but then you're saying that it gets a bit jittery. I know in the industry they actually keyframe it later on, but I'm wondering how you guys are filtering it out.
So the question is how we are handling the hand jittering?
Hand jittery, because there's going to be noise in the data.
Yeah, there is some noise in the data, but once we get like the recording, like the hand data, we can actually adjust it frame by frame to make sure that there's no jittering in the final video. Yeah, we can like keyframe after we get the motion capture data, yeah. Yes?
At least from your demo, I guess, or your progress so far, it seems like it reminds me a lot of how hands move in like a game, I guess. I'm wondering if that's like an intentional choice or if you're gonna do something to make the animation to look more, you would look like more how you would be with your own hands doing that kind of thing.
So what's the question?
It looks very game-like, the like position of the hands and movement. I'm wondering if that's intentional or if you're gonna keep that more.
I think we do take some reference from games, but like our intention is like to mimic how you will look at your hands like in real life. Yeah, but like games are still like doing something similar to that. So yeah, but we're still just trying to mimic how like you are looking at your hands. We're trying to make the audience to think that the audience themselves is the witch.
And just to add on that a little bit, so I think the art style will play a lot roles on like making everything looks more realistic. So now currently we are having a lot of placeholder, but for the final product we think we will adjust the lighting, which plays a big role on like making everything looks realistic, and we also replace all the textures to make everything looks more realistic. And as they said, we will adjust the animation by adjust all the keys to make it look like smoother and more natural. So I think everything will just make the final products look more like an animation instead of a game scene.
All right, that's time. Thanks, Kate.
Good afternoon. Whoops. 1 second, sorry. Okay. Good. Very ready. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are Learflow. Our team is composed of Wizard Hugh, programmer, Noah Kenkanala, producer and sound designer, Wishko, programmer, Yuji Sato, assistant producer and sound designer, and Jack Weston, artist and designer. Our faculty advisors are John Desler and Ricardo Washington. Lyric is a discovery project that is exploring how combinations of visuals and interactions and gameplay in VR can make music theory more engaging and accessible for university students with an interest in music. Our project goal is to explore and discover how VR and music theory can be romanced to foster musical curiosity. We define musical curiosity as a self-guided exploration or pursuit of music. We're focused on exploration and discovery rather than teaching. This is because, through our research, we found that the crossroads of virtual reality and music theory is quite unexcavated, it's quite unestablished. Our goal throughout this semester is to discover and explore this terrain and see what works and what doesn't, document our findings, and hopefully in the future, teams or products exploring this terrain can look to our source material or our explorations as some form of guidance or reference point. So VR offers unique affordances that have truly shaped our experience that we have leveraged and leaned into. The first is isolation as a tactic. It's this notion of VR as a private sanctuary. The second is kinesthetic and haptic input and feedback. So this ability to take familiar gestures that we use throughout our lives, interactions that are ubiquitous in our lives, and map these kind of abstract musical concepts so we can use our body as a mechanism to understand how music functions. The third is spatiality. We're immersed in a 360-degree plane of visual and sonic information. So in our first prototype, we really leaned into kinesthesia and haptic input and feedback. In this prototype, gets to learn about chord structures through a VR embodiment of pulling back scale degrees and firing them in order to resolve dissonant chords. But before we jump into that, a chord structure is essentially the way that a chord is arranged. And different chord arrangements can produce different effects. And now Jack will dive into the granular detail of this prototype.
Thanks, Noah. Yeah. Okay, so as Noah said, our first prototype was about this kind of pullback mechanic. So just watch the video here where the person is pulling back to launch chords to resolve dissonance. And note that instantaneous musical feedback, because that's important. And that's Wizard pulling it back. So that mechanical gesture actually helped a ton with physically remembering what you were doing and tying that to a kinesthetic or muscle memory tied response. So that was really useful. We actually did have some issues that we wanted to resolve moving forward. So this was the harpoon, emphasis on harp, for our first prototype, yes. Great pun, thank you. And it struggled in its abstraction because it was pulling in two different directions. Part of it was really abstract and amorphous, and part of it was super concrete, like the notes and the staff, but they weren't connected and it was confusing people, so that was pulling people in the wrong direction. We also didn't have any guidance, like zero guidance for people. That was an issue and we wanted to resolve that moving forward. And then we also had excessive topics in there. We had chords, we had chord order, we had chord arrangement, we had dissonance as a structure, we had all these things, we had key, and that was confusing people. So in terms of remediating this, we decided to first create design metrics to stop this from happening proactively and to make things work better in the brainstorming stage so it doesn't get to that point. And then, we also decided to hone on specific levels of abstraction first. We made a clear goal for people and a hint UI that was diegetic that they could interact with. And then we narrowed our musical focus, so we were only doing one topic and nothing bled over. In terms of something that was really good, the kinesthetic thing that I mentioned earlier, that pullback metric, that was really good. People actually tied that in, and you heard the whole musical key the whole time. That was really good. So that we actually took forward, and Yuji's going to tell you about that, and we used that actually to formulate our next accordion prototype.
Thanks, Jack. So taking our learnings from prototype 1, we moved on to prototype 2, which explored chord progressions using atmospheric environmental feedback. So what are chord progressions? So chord progressions are a sequence of chords which, when played, creates the tone, the mood, the atmosphere of a piece of music. And we thought that maybe the environment could be an interesting way to convey this. So for prototype 2, we used a lot of paper prototyping so that while the tech was being developed, the design team could go ahead and start iterating and see if the solutions we came up for prototype 1's flaws actually worked or not. And how our paper prototype worked is we just made some sticky notes with chord symbols on them, and guests could touch it. I would play it on my MIDI keyboard to simulate the game, And then we would change the environment shown on the screen to kind of simulate environmental feedback. And after a few more iterations, we reached our Unity prototype. In it, you're given an accordion, which you can stretch and move around to select different chords. The distance between the two controllers controls which chord you're currently on. Once you choose a chord to play, you can hold down the trigger to actually perform that chord. So to actually interact with the environment, you can attach your accordion to these air pipes in front of you, and you can input chords into them by performing into it. The environmental change correlates with what you put in, so if you put in a 1 chord, it moves up, the object moves up 1 space. If you put in a 4 chord, the object moves up 4 spaces. This is to visually show the spatial relationships between various chords. And once you create your chord progression, you can test it by jumping, which fires the chord cannon. So this lets you actually hear a chord progression, and depending on what you put in, it gives you different environmental feedback. In this case, they created a 1-4-5-1 chord progression, which is very warm and bright, so the feedback is the sun coming out and brightening the world. And we also composed the music based on the chord progressions you put in so that you can hear what your chord progression could sound like if it was expanded into a full piece of music. So as we play tested and prototyped, we found out a lot of things we could iterate on. One thing we found out is freedom is hard to adjust. So a lot of people wanted complete freedom to play a bunch of chords, make their own sequences, and try out new chord progressions. But at the same time, they wanted more guidance on what kind, what should they explore? What's a good chord progression? What's a bad chord progression, etc. So how we facilitated this is we iterated on how we gave hints and clues. We started off by giving a lot of visual clues, like a cheat sheet, which had a bunch of good chord progressions that people could try out. But we found out that visual clues weren't the best because people were too distracted about looking and reading, and they weren't listening to what they were performing. So we iterated by shifting a lot more to audio clues. So here's some examples. So when you attach the accordion to the air pipes, there's this windy ambient sound. That's actually a chord suggestion that you can follow with your accordion to make better chord progressions. And if you really need help, you can go to our guitar guy. And if you touch him, he plays example chord progressions for you they can try out. And as you move on, and another thing that we iterated on was environmental feedback. So in our earlier prototypes, what happened is if you performed, say, happy chords on your accordion, the environment would magically become warmer and brighter. If you played something sad, it would become darker and rainier. We found that this was a bit too abstract for people to grasp. They didn't see the connection between the music and these environmental changes. So how we iterated is we added one more thing to this equation, physical interaction. We already knew that physical embodiment worked quite well, so we tried to tie in physical embodiment into environmental interaction. In this case, we had an accordion, so we thought maybe manipulating the environment through the use of wind might be an interesting way to solve this challenge, which is why we used those air pipes and such. Now I'll pass it back to Jack to talk about art and the environment iterations.
Thank you, Yuji. Yeah, so art. Basically, the core of this is the opposite of every other major type of media, where a lot of times sound is the supporting role and art is the forefront. This is the opposite, where the art really needs to be second to the sound, because this is a sound type of study. And the biggest way that we were trying to do that was not drawing attention away from something that was forefront, like the music. So we had a boba-esque, Kiki Boba, boba-esque, soft, gummy, like you could eat it kind of vibe for this whole environment to make it soft and inviting and comfortable for people, and then having the music be high contrast up in front. So also note the color of this was changeable with the key. We had notes that would come in and attack you. It was a tower defense game style format. So you would be shooting these notes, which worked in 3D and VR. And it was generally really good, but there was a lot of stuff happening and people were getting confused. And people didn't really understand what they were looking at. They had to buy into the world first, and that was not happening because it was too abstract. It was kind of like Soul, but it was not enough that people knew what it was. So to tie that in, they needed to have something more material. So for the second prototype, we grounded that in very literal materials. And we used materials that were more evocative of that learning era that we experience, where everything's assembled from cardboard or paper or plastic and those type of things. And there's staples that are holding the handles together and stuff like that. So that was also the way that we crafted this diegetic UI for the guitar guy that would help us out, where you would touch him and he would give you advice, and he would dance, and that would draw people in. And then lastly, just to say that we would highlight the straws based on plastic versus like the McDonald's type straw, and that would kind of select which one you were going to interact with to indirectly control. And then we had direct control, which was jump on this floor to launch the pin. And we would have this whole thing to tie everything together environmentally. And to talk about mechanics, Wizard.
Thank you, Jack. So for us tech part, So for tech part, we have two main mechanisms for our VR controller. The first one is to making the curve and elastic connection between the two controllers. The method we use is that we use the cubic Bezier curve function to calculate 20 points along the line render, and then create the connect unit based on this precision. And we will modify the scale of this connect unit based on the distance of two controllers. So make sure that each connect looks connect together and looks elastic. And for the user interface, we'll attach it on the middle connect unit, a position above it. So, and always look at the player. We'll make sure whenever the player playing the accordion with different direction, they can see the code number clearly. And the second mechanism of our controller is detecting which code the player is playing based on distance of the two controllers. So this is demo video. And what we do is that we assign the minimal last and maximal last in advance and calculate 7 intervals responding to the 7 codes. So we can adjust these intervals based on the player arm last. That means the player with different arm lasts can have same experience in our world. And as for the interaction, the first interaction is code pumping into the pipe. The goal of this experience is to make it feel realistic and also easy understanding. So the first thing we do is that when the player is approaching the pipe input, we will snap the accordion into the pipe input port. So they will know they can interact with it. And when the player is pressing, we were detecting the ratio of pressing distance, and then modify the density of controller's impulse, and also the font size above the input pipe port. So modify the size, make the player feel that they are really pressing something, and also input the air into the pipe. Finally, when the player full pressing, we will provide some feedback. The sound goes through the pipe and bring out the object. And also the visual effect that the copper cover the pipe input ports, and also change the materials of pipe into a transparent, make the player know that they are complete this interaction. And this is the demo video. So they are snapping first, and then modify the font size, and also as the density of controllers, and then provide the sound and visual feedback. And for the final interaction, I will pass to Wish to introduce that.
Thanks, Wizard. So our next interaction is jump launch. After the user finishes pumping the 4 chords into the pipe, they are able to jump and launch the pin to check their answers. The reason why we choose jump as our interaction, one is because we want to simplify our things. We don't want to put too many props, such as an additional button to launch to distract the users. And another reason is that the player's hands are already occupied with the accordion. So we choose to use the body movement control, which is also using the advantage of VR. We will detect the player's height at the beginning of our experience. And then when they jump over 20 centimeters, the pin will be launched. Here's a demo. Okay, and let's move to our timeline. We will wrap up our prototype this week and start ideate the 3rd prototypes. And there are 2 more prototypes for us to explore in this semester. And each time when we find what works, we will bring it to the next one. In this case, we will keep improve our design. And at the end of the semester, we will prepare for the playtest day and also carefully document our project. And for our deliverables, the first one is the documentation about what we've learned and what we've done. And the second one is the analyzed data from our playtest experience. And also, there are some potential conferences for us to attend. Maybe we can submit to the South by Southwest, EDU, or even apply to SIGGRAPH. And what's more is, in fact, the Museum Lab has already reached out to us. They invited us to attend the exhibition next year, which is pretty exciting. And I'll pass to Noah to wrap up our presentation.
Yeah, just really quick, wrapping up. As Wish mentioned, we were reached out to by Museum, which was a huge validation point for us. And it was validating because it gave, I guess, a sense of strength to what we were doing. And this is Learflow in context, so we're focusing on mechanic in context. In the future, teams developing for a product can maybe be influenced by what we're doing. And thank you so much. We're now open for questions.
Any questions? Yes, Dave.
I like the idea of inspiring curiosity about music. I'm curious, why do you think people struggle to be curious about music? And what have you found so far to be effective ways to inspire that curiosity?
Yeah, so the question was, why do we feel like it's valuable? Sorry, why is it valuable?
People who are in your audience, target audience, not curious the way you want them to be?
Yeah.
Why not?
So why are they not already curious? And do you want to take this one?
Sure. So one thing about music is that a lot of people find it as this hard to interact with. Like a lot of people have a hard time performing music and manipulating it. And I think one thing we found is that, for example, in the first prototype with the dragging back the notes, or in this one with the accordion and being able to quickly and easily play chords, we found that lowering the barrier of the interaction of music, making it easier to manipulate it, kind of opens up a lot of doors for a lot of people to start experimenting and discover what they like about music. I think that's the one big thing we've found so far.
Anything else? Catherine.
I have a question about your playtesting. So I know that you were thinking about like an audience that may not have very much exposure to music theory or might like think that it's too complicated. So have you been able to playtest with people who know like nothing about music at all or no exposure to music therapy or theory, not therapy?
So the question was, have you been able to playtest with people without too much experience with music? Yeah, so we actually have. We've been trying to target people like that. So our usual flow is we start out with someone who already knows the music theory. SMEs are just people who casually interact with music. And then we have them interact with it and they tell us if it makes sense or not. And then once we get the validation that it kind of makes sense, we have moved on to people who have less experience. And that's where we find a lot of the information that's valuable for the iterations on hints and clues. We found that playtesting, obviously, with people who are not engaged with music, very helpful for designing our guidance in our experience.
Time for one more?
Yes, Bob.
Have you thought about players who might be tone deaf who play this? Or maybe I have a misconception, maybe there's no one who's tone deaf.
So that is something we are still looking into, yes. We haven't specifically targeted that yet, but in the future, because we've found that the VR embodiment really helps with getting a sense of how spatial relations work between pitches, it will be really fascinating to explore if this helps with tone deaf. Like if you were able to associate certain physical movements with pitch, maybe that could help with tone deafness, but no, we have not specifically looked into playtesting with people who are tone deaf.
All right, thanks, team.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations to all the teams. First pass back in the FAS. Good job, everyone. Faculty, we'll see you on Zoom.